nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start our meeting this evening, I once again have the privilege of issuing a certificate to Mr. Tony Hannes in regards to the years that he's been with us. And I will just say from a personal standpoint, he was just a heck of an employer. So if you want to come up here with me, Tony. We just don't give these to everybody, by the way, folks. This is a 5-year certificate for the 5 years that Tony's been with us, and I will say that, again, from a personal standpoint, he has progressively, step by step, very well, and right now he's in the groove with everybody that he works with. He gets along with people. He does a good job with the outside public, which is really important to us. And sometimes he makes me laugh. So with this, there's a 5-year certificate for Tony, and I'm very proud to be able to give it to him. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Speech.
I quit.
Yes.
You're there.
Just want to thank the council for giving me an opportunity 5 years ago. I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people, and it's sure gone by fast. So, so thank you again.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We will continue now with this evening's consent agenda. A, City Council Work Session, March 15, 2022. City Council Regular Meeting, March 15, 2022. B, consider a motion to adopt Resolution R 22-10, authorizing the mayor and city administrator to execute a grant agreement with Minnesota Department of Transportation, MnDOT, Office of Aeronautics, for state project number A4306-C3 at the Winsted Municipal Airport for federal airport expenses reimbursement through an airport rescue grant, ARG, under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARPA. C, authorize the city administrator to execute a land lease with Barfnick Farm LLC to farm approximately 6 acres of land adjacent to the wastewater treatment facility in the amount of $1,200 and expiring December 31st, 2022. D, authorize the city administrator to execute a quote with Ritter and Ritter Incorporated for sanitary sewer cleaning in the amount of $15,201.80, with the option of for televising in the amount of $4,250 for the amount not to exceed $19,500. E, authorize the city administrator to execute a fireworks display contract to engage the services of Spark One Incorporated to produce and perform a fireworks display with terms and conditions on Friday, August 12th, 2022, with an alternate rain date of Saturday, August 13th, 2022. F, consider a motion to approve a 1 to 4 day temporary on-sale liquor license for the Church of Holy Trinity Woodstock Country Music Festival scheduled for June 16th and 17th and 18th, 2022 at the Woodstock Campgrounds, 230 Street, Winsted, Minnesota. G, adopt Resolution R 22-11 to accept a donation from the Winsted Area Chamber of Commerce for the amount of $150 to be dedicated toward the 2022 Winsted Police Department Bike Rodeo event. H, approve a dance permit for the Blue Note Ballroom at 320 3rd Street South for the Woodstock Rumble event on Saturday, April 23rd, 2022. Claims, approve the claim list for April 5th, 2022. I need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There's no public hearing this evening, and there's no old business this evening. So the first product under the new business is Mr. Adam.
Sure. So this evening, first off, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. The first item, as the mayor said, is in regards to the 2022 street improvement project. We have received all the bids for that project, or the bid close date has passed. So we're going to review the bids this evening, and I've asked Jake Salisbury of Bolton Mink to join us to discuss that item. Mr. Salisbury?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this project was the first project identified in the 2020 pavement management plan. At that time, we were in the middle of McLeod Avenue, so this was the first project. So when this came up, we talked with the council, we looked at some scoping options, we discussed maybe doing a little bit more, doing a little bit less. We settled on the mill and overlay project, which was consistent with what was in the pavement management plan. We went through the design, advertise, and bid phases. So we opened bids on March 16th. As you can see, there was 5 bids received, so that was a good number of bids. The low bid was by William Mueller & Sons from Hamburg. They've done a lot of work of this type. They've also done other work in town, so we're very comfortable with them as the low bidder. We did not see a significant increase in material or labor prices, which has been part of the economy a little bit of late, so good news with that. Price was down below the engineer's estimate, 17% below the engineer's estimated amount. So low bid amount, $626,520.75. We are recommending that you award that to William Mueller & Sons, and if so, we would proceed with contracts and get working on scheduling and insurance and bonds, etc.
As far as scheduling, when do you believe they would begin?
So we did ask that question, and they didn't really commit to anything as of yet. Typically, it takes about a month to get all the submittals and those items I mentioned, bonds, insurance, etc. So earliest case would be May, early May, after road restrictions go off and those items are in place. We did set up a long window for this work to be completed. It helps keep the bid prices down, so the completion date isn't until the fall, and this isn't going to be a tremendous amount of time for them. So once we know something, we'll update City Hall so you're aware of it. We just have provisions in the bid docs that they can't come in and mill off a couple blocks and then leave town for 3 weeks. Once they're here, they have to make progress on the project.
I guess this question is for staff. Do we do any kind of notification to the people on those streets when
I don't-
projects are going to start?
I don't think we have in the past, have we, Jake? Or?
We've talked about sending a letter once we have a tentative schedule.
Okay.
Just kind of an informal letter, and here's a phone number in case you have questions, sort of thing.
Okay,
And then that would be the extent of it, but we would give them contact information to follow up with.
just so they know what's going on.
Yes. Yeah,
Because at that point, there'd be no parking on that street once they start doing.
Yeah, we have it required in the contract that the contractor will have to put signs, temporary signs with lath when that day comes, but we would put that in the letter that we anticipate at least to a week, the week of X date, to get your cars off the street and whatnot.
Will that be a week? Because I know there's a new house going up on that, in that cul-de-sac up there.
So the removal work, if someone's on the street during the removals, that isn't the end of the world. We can go around that. It's kind of a nuisance, but obviously for the new paving work, then it's much more critical. And then it'll depend where we have some of the concrete replacements. That'll take a little bit of time. Those are, that's spot repair stuff, so that's here and there. So if that's in front of someone's driveway, they'll have to be out of their driveway for, roughly a week while the concrete cures. It's going to depend on the location, but otherwise the milling will just take a day. And then the concrete work will take a few days, but just a day per street, and then a week to cure. Then there's also some drain tile work, so it kind of depends on the exact location, if there's tile work or not.
I think the location that Bonnie is speaking of doesn't have any spot repair for the concrete, for curb and gutter, and it probably doesn't have drainage
Okay.
associated with it because it's on the high portion of the block. But to Bonnie's point, there is some new construction adjacent to some of these property, to the street sections, so we'll have to be cognitive of working
Yep, we'll
together
have to
there.
work with them, and then when it comes time to pave, it'll just take a matter of hours to pave and then roll it, right, we'll roll it and compact it right behind the paving. So it'll just be a day, half a day nuisance when that occurs.
When are you starting? When will they be starting this
We-
road?
That we don't know yet. Sometime after early May. We'll get that ironed out shortly.
Might work out?
It always does.
Hey Jake, question for you. Do you keep track of how many times you guys all the estimates come in below your estimate?
We do have, I can't answer that question exactly, but we do keep a tabulation of that sort of thing to see how we're doing. And obviously, things adjust with the market and the contractors and whatnot.
Steve, it's called exceeding expectations.
I was waiting for him to tell me that.
So if they set it high and it comes in low,
We had a recent bid where there was 3 bidders, and the engineer's estimate was the low bid, so opposite of what you're seeing here. So it goes both ways. That was more of a pipe job. There's some serious shortages in water main pipe, for example. So those different things come and go and fluctuate, but the paving numbers have been good. So in this case, Bolton and Mink was the high bidder, which is a good thing. As opposed to being the
Thing you're not in construction.
That would be,
I think we should be grateful that we're not doing pipe work then, is what.
yes.
Yeah, there's projects that can't even get ductile iron pipe. That's out 20 weeks. So they say, do you want to do the project next year, or do you want to change your design? So things like that are happening elsewhere.
wow. 20 weeks?
Yeah, you can do the math. That's 5 months. That's the end of construction season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be snow.
Yes, yeah, you'll be fighting to get done before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
You want to add? Any other comments?
no, Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to award a contract to William Mueller and Sons Incorporated to complete the 2022 street improvement project in the amount of $626,520.75.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions,
Second.
comments? Bonnie seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is Adam again.
Sir, so we were recently contacted by the Minnesota Department of Health if we wanted to voluntarily do some testing for manganese within our drinking water system. And with our thought process was that it's best to have that data available to us if what the manganese levels are in our waters, because we don't typically test for that. And if the Minnesota Department of Health is willing to administer that testing and pay for those costs, we thought it'd be beneficial to gather that data. So with that testing, they notified us that we do have higher than normal levels of manganese. So again, I've asked Mr. Salisbury to join us to discuss what the implications of those are.
Yes, so not surprising. I know at one of the goal-setting retreats a few years ago, we did talk about manganese. That was one of the discussion points when we talked about planning for a water plant. So we knew there was manganese in the water. We know there's iron. We know there's manganese, and we know there's arsenic, which are the 3 that we're talking about in town. So this isn't surprising. However, one of the wells did have higher numbers than we would have liked to have seen. So that is well number 3. They're roughly in the 200 range, 200 micrograms per liter. So for general health, you want to be less than 300, so it's below that. But for infants and fetuses, you want to be less than 100. So well 3 is higher than that number. Well 2 was about at that number of 100. And then the good news is well 4, which is the primary source of water, where the bulk of our water is pumped from, that was down around 20 micrograms per liter. So good news, bad news, we do have elevated numbers, and specifically one well. That well also has the arsenic in it, so we do blend that with the good well. So that specific well has that higher number, but when we're producing water, it's mixed with that lower one. So so it's not, we're not pumping straight 300 milligram per liter. microgram per liter water into the system with manganese. Does that make sense? So we're still below the thresholds that would require treatment, but the state is recommending that we notify users, which I think is a good idea. Let them know about that one well, what those numbers are. At the same time, Public Works staff is aware of this, and it's not going to significantly change operations because we get most of our water from the big Mount Simon well, the deeper well, which is the highest quality water. So I'll continue to emphasize the use of that well as much as possible.
Do those numbers ever go up or down?
They fluctuate a little bit. I mean, manganese is in soil, it's in groundwater, so it's pretty much in everybody's water. It's just a matter of what numbers. It'll fluctuate a little bit depending on season and well, and which aquifer and whatnot, but not significantly.
We still want it.
Other than blending, is there any other way to reduce
the
it?
next item, yeah.
Well, then you're talking a water treatment facility.
And that's what that water treatment.
Yeah, so that's one of the main targets of that future water plant that we.
But if I read this correctly, if your home has a water softener, that'll help as well.
That'll help reduce those numbers as well, yes.
Okay.
And that and between the blending, something we need to watch, something we need to monitor, and I think we keep planning for another water source for one, which this council's already talked about, which is also next on the agenda, this memo that's up on the screen there, so kind of ties into that discussion. This well 2 and well 3, they're both very old wells. As we get another well online, it would be nice to decommission probably the one with the arsenic and the higher manganese. Maybe keep it as an emergency well. Don't plan to use it, and then at whatever point it requires, an investment or requires at that point, obviously let's not put any more money into it and maybe get rid of it at that time. But it's always nice to have a well just in case something unforeseen happens, even if the quality might not be the best. So I'm thinking something along those lines.
Okay.
And then at the meantime, still pursue the water plant. Kind of down the list a little ways of priorities from the council from when we talked in January. But having this data, that'll help with that pursuit. We have some numbers that are triggering the state to ask us what's happening, so that we have some of that data to help with the future funding pursuit and future project.
Right. So that's probably the most important aspect in my mind, is now we have some more data to back up our need for the water treatment facility in the future as we seek state funding for that, or federal funding, whatever opportunities present themselves for outside funding. But again, to Jake's point, then we will, and to the Minnesota Department of Health's recommendation, we will notify all of our residents, so they'll likely get some sort of notification within an upcoming water bill that reflects the information provided by Bolton Mink and Minnesota Department of Health regarding the effects of manganese levels.
Will be put in there also the mixture of the water that we do?
After listening to Jake present this, I think we will rewrite our drafted letter to include maybe some of those operational things that we're doing to mitigate those manganese levels, or that we're accomplishing to lessen the effects of the manganese. Is that fair to say in that, Jake?
Yeah, I say we tweak that language that we provided and just
Right.
confirm with Chris and the staff how
I
exactly.
would think too, most of our homes have water softeners, because our water is hard anyway.
Right.
So, that might, you
Right,
might
so
want to
yeah,
have that in there.
I mean, with our letter reflecting that also helps it. That'll help
Right.
maybe nudge me that doesn't have
Right.
a water softener too.
Does
If they
it,
have that age group, they might want to.
Yep.
does it help, that softener help to decrease it enough for, like you were saying, babies and infants?
I'm not sure to what extent the impact that has.
Well, with the blending, it is now.
With the blending, it's automatically happening, but with the water softeners, I don't know how.
Just adds to it.
Just the one well that exceeds.
Yeah, that's the well we typically try to avoid using anyway.
Jake, will Bolton and Mink keep their eyes open for what the legislature does with their funding?
Yep, we monitor that stuff. I send stuff to Adam every couple months, whether it's for this project or something else.
Because with the surplus, they might beef up that fund more.
Yeah, not that you care how the internal workings of Bolton and Mink happen, but we get a funding email for something every day at noon. We have a staff person that sends out something every day. So some of it's same things that come up, but these major ones, I always review them and then forward them if I think they're applicable. So yes, we will continue to monitor that. It's something that we spend a lot of time on. And with the potential influx of money coming with some of the recent bills, they're still trying to figure out how all those funds are getting distributed. So, but we are on the Public Facilities Authority's PPL list, the project. We are on that list for both the well and the water treatment plant. So that's the first, what we think will be the first step of getting our hands on any money. So that's been done.
Good. Any other questions for Jake? If not, we'll go to the next new business item regarding Adam, well number 5, Adam.
Sure. So as Jake stated, Bolton Mink has provided a memo within your packet regarding our next steps on adding an additional water source. So again, this all ties nicely with the previous conversation. Mr. Salisbury?
Yes, so as mentioned, the city currently runs 3 wells. The 2 older wells are drift wells, meaning they're basically taking groundwater that's, drifting through the soils underneath. And then the final one is a Mount Simon aquifer well, which is the deeper one. That's where we're getting our higher quality water. That's where we're getting a higher capacity. So we're getting most of the water from that newer well that was done in 2004, 2005, something like that. So, well number 4 is operating. There's been some recent work on it, but well number 4 is the main source of water, and it's working well. And that's also blended with that other well with the arsenic and to help with the overall water quality. So, well number 2 and 3 are both old, getting up there in years. I've mentioned the city's firm capacity before, so if you just think of firm capacity, it's a calculation that says the city can maintain their water service during a high use day, which is typically a summer day, while there's a significant event, like you're fighting a fire, or there was a trunk line water main break or something like that, that you're still able to support your system. So that's a calculation that goes into that. Right now, the city's a little bit short on that calculation because of having to blend the arsenic well with well 4. So if you lose well 4, you can't use that other well either. So you kind of lose 2 wells, if that makes sense. So with that, it's recommended to pursue a new well. Several steps have been taken. I mentioned the Public Facilities Authority step. I have that listed as step number 2 there. We also did the water supply plan when we first started talking about this 4 years ago. Those are done. We hired an outside firm to do that hydrogeologic assessment, essentially groundwater modeling. So I know I've said to the council before, wells are my least favorite project because you're trying to find something that's up to 1,000 feet underground. It's a little less certain than other things. So we try to avoid spending lots of money digging holes and doing test wells and not finding water. So that's step number 4 there. That's a cost-effective step to try to make sure we're targeting areas where we're going to have success. So we've received that report. We're waiting to get that finalized with a few other things with some of this recent data that we've talked about. And then the council discussed this again and decided to proceed with the next steps for a well. So that's essentially what's prompting this letter here. So upcoming steps, intended use plan placement. That's just a follow-up to that public facilities. That's a funding step. We've already done that in the past. We just need to update that and send it in. And then the more significant items here are 2 through 4. Do some more water testing. Some of these other things, we just talked about manganese, also testing for iron, hardness, alkalinity, arsenic, etc. And then part of that cost listed there, that's for an outside lab to run that data. We obviously can't do that. We would help collect the data. We'd work with public works staff to collect the samples and then get that data from a third party, finish that hydrogeologic assessment, make any revisions we need to that, and then complete a water study. So basically you get a report, a preliminary engineering report or a feasibility study that outlines everything and what we think are good targeted areas for a well. Do we have enough data where we want to just recommend proceeding with drilling a well, or whether we want to do test holes or test wells at a couple locations. So that's step number 4 and 5 are kind of the same step there, but that would really identify, kind of get us to the finish line of the preliminary design where we can proceed with the project, or if we want to recommend some test well work to pin things down. So all those fees in that letter there add up to $14,300 is an estimated total, and then we figure it would take roughly about a year to complete, so about a year from now.
When you drill a new well, what's the process to determine what aquifer we can be in and what we can't?
So part of that water study, that's a very good question. We need to reach out to the DNR. You know, the current city's main well is a Mount Simon well. They're more expensive, they're deeper, they're bigger, but that's got better water. But that's the most heavily regulated aquifer, so
Isn't that the one that most of the metro area is in?
most of the metro area is now unable to access that aquifer. It's regulated to that extent, but that's a 7-county metro rule. For a metro city to get into that aquifer, they have to jump through a lot of hoops and spend a lot more money than this on preliminary items to show that they don't have any other option. They basically have to do test wells and show there's no water elsewhere. So it's not quite that bad here, but we're still gonna have to go through that process and see what the state needs in order for us to, if we want to pursue that at higher cost.
Do you foresee the new well being close to one of the existing wells?
If it's not a Mount Simon well, I foresee it being close, because we'd have a different source. If it is a Mount Simon well, you have to run some calcs on the interference and the drawdown between the two, because it's less effective to have two next to each other. So that's part of that water study. We would look at that. So it really depends on the aquifer.
Okay,
Not a great answer to your question, but
well,
I,
it cost us the same, right?
I think I'm hopeful that we're able to install it near our current well and water tower park system. That would fit nicely. If we ultimately get to a water treatment facility, we could locate it. There's space for that as well there, and then that would eliminate some piping cost. But maybe that's just really wishful thinking at this point.
correct. The closer we can put the well to the water tower, the smaller the future costs will be to hook everything together, assuming a water treatment facility comes online someday. Basically, we're going to start there and then work out.
But it's a year's time, right?
Correct. So, and then, assuming we want to take the PFA financing route, we're not required to do that, but there might be some opportunities with that. So that deadline every year is June for the intended use plan. So if we can get this identified by spring, we can make a determination whether we want to engage that process in time for their next funding cycle. So every June is kind of a deadline for if we're going to pursue PFA financing. We haven't made that decision. It depends on the type of well and what that estimated cost is and whatnot. But those are some discussions I'll have. I'll get Adam some data as we have it, and we'll.
And what does PFA stand for?
Public Facilities Authority. So that's the state agency that does a lot of financing. They finance the wastewater plant project. Basically, the city can use the state's bonding capacity and to get a lower interest loan. But you have to take some other steps in order to qualify for that.
Any other questions or comments? Anything from you? And I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize Bolton and Mink Incorporated to complete additional preliminary design items needed to assist in the development and installation of a new municipal well in the city of Winsted for a cost not to exceed $14,500.
I have a motion. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Winsted Police Department. Mr. Held.
Yep.
I was gonna say that, but I won't now. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me. It was last time I was here for my report would have been November 2nd of last year. And like in years past, I just go through the things we do in the department, sort of over and above our daily duties. Those are reported in our monthly totals and our yearly totals as well. So last November, I attended the Executive Training Institute. Generally, that's held it's actually being held right now. But it was held last November due to COVID. It wasn't in the spring. So it was last November in St. Cloud. I attended that. I assisted with the fire department interviews. We held our annual reviews for our full-time officers. December, officers attended annual training with the McLeod County Sheriff's Office. That's our use of force, taser, less than lethal. those required trainings that we do every year. A couple years ago, we partnered with the sheriff's office, so we do all of our training within a day or two period, which works out really well, especially for scheduling. We assisted with the Winston Festival Parade. Officers attended critical incident de-escalation, racial profiling, and mental health training at the Minnesota BCA. Officer Nelson attended the Data Master Breathalyzer training at the Minnesota BCA. January 1st, we continued our on-call weekend agreement with the Lester Prairie Police Department. We started that last January, and it went fairly well throughout the year. That was just for the weekends. So what that did is ensured that there was an officer working at least 10 hours each weekend day shift, and it helped drastically with reducing the on-call hours for the night officer, as we had done in the past. Officers attended quarterly medical training with the fire department. I'm just going to go back to the last point. This January 1st, we extended our weekend on-call agreement with Lester Prairie to include holidays now. So the holidays throughout the year are now staffed with an officer working, rather than just being on call. I attended the City Council goal-setting retreat in January, and I also attended a tour of the new Millburn Manufacturing building south of town. February, officers attended the McLeod County Attorney's Office training they put on with legislative updates, new rule changes, different ways of doing business on the prosecutor side of things, which is very enlightening for us. Participated in the annual city audit. I started teaching the DARE program at the end of February at Holy Trinity for the 5th and 6th graders. It's great to be back in school due to COVID. I was not able to be there for a year. In March, officers attended the night firearms qualification shoot. Again, that's done in conjunction with the McLeod County Sheriff's Office. We do night shoots, day shoots, training shoots, and in March, it was our night shoot. We assist with the Knights of Columbus Fish Fry at the Blue Note. Officers attended a training session with our medical director, Kevin Saprell. He works through Ridgeview Medical Center. He is our medical director. He comes on site at the fire department for a couple hours and provides us with very pertinent information of trends in care and what they're seeing in the emergency room to better help us respond to medicals. As you know, we respond to a lot of medicals in town. Assistant McLeod County Jail with fingerprinting students at the Winston Elementary School. That's always a great time. We didn't do that either last year due to COVID, but you get to see all the little kids and fingerprint them, and they get to bring their fingerprints home. In April, we are in April. Officer Nelson actually tomorrow is going to be attending the stop stick training. If you recall, a couple months back, you approved the purchase of stop sticks. It's a tire deflation device that will be placed in our squad cars. He's attending that training tomorrow. Shortly after that, he'll be training all of us in the use of them, and they'll be placed in our squad cars. I was just going to give a little update on our emergency call coverage agreement for 2021 with Lester Prairie. So Lester Prairie responded to 51 calls in the city of Winston last year on weekends, and we, as in the Winston Police Department, responded to 25 calls in Lester Prairie. As I stated earlier, I think it's just important. It has really boosted, I can only speak for the officers of our department, but it's boosted the morale of the night officer. So they can go off shift, go home and sleep, and not worry about being called out at all, unless it's truly a large scale event. It's increased safety for those officers, being they can sleep and they're going to be ready for their next shift. In 2022, like I stated, we have moved into the holidays. We've had a couple holidays where the coverage, we've had the coverage. So I think those are all good steps to, take that extra stress off those officers. I think it's a really good thing. I can't speak for Lester, but in talking with Chief Carlson, I think his officers and his department has realized the same benefit. I'll move into the 2021 PD report. I believe you have all those, or that report with you today. I'll just hit on a couple items. 2021, we had 22 accidents reported in Winston. There was 26 in 2020. We had 4 DWI arrests in 2021, which is down from 10 in 2020. There's 36 dog complaints. We had 33 physical arrests in 2021. That's the same as 2020. The one thing with physical arrests that, can be a little deceiving. So that's actually when handcuffs are placed on somebody and they're taken to the McLeod County Jail. That doesn't mean that's all the crimes we investigate or people that get charged. There's at least that amount, if not probably closer to double that amount of people that get charged with felonies and gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors and other crimes. But that's done through the formal complaint process. That is where we submit our reports for review, and then they're charged through complaint or summons. We issued 155 citations last year, and we issued 707 warnings. There was 28 thefts reported, which is similar to the year prior. And we responded to 165 medicals, which is down just under 20 from 2020. On the report, are there any questions on that specific yearly report for 2021?
Have you seen your gas theft starting to go up? I know you've seen catalytic converters.
Yep.
I'm just curious about the gas.
We haven't, and I have actually thought about that as well, because we've experienced that in the past with the siphoning. We have not had the reports. That doesn't mean it's not happening. So I think everyone should take steps to ensure the safety of their vehicles and their property. But that's a very good point to bring up, because that with the part prices, that does come with that.
Have we had catalytic converters being stolen off cars
Several.
out here?
Yep. Some of our businesses in town have had it, some of our residences. Yep, that, when I say several, that's several over the last couple of years, not just all at one time. But as you hear it, you know, it's always happening all over the place in the metro. It is happening everywhere. It's unfortunately a high price item that they can get strapped for, so.
Chief, can you also let the city council and our residents and businesses know the item that you and I discussed earlier this week regarding car thefts, or the rise in that as well?
Yeah, yep. So last week, and it's not uncommon for us to have a vehicle stolen in town a couple a year. That does happen. Last week was a little peculiar. It is actually an open investigation yet, so I won't hit on the details, but there was a vehicle parked at one of our businesses in the early morning hours. An employee went out to start their vehicle. Shortly after starting their vehicle was stolen. And then it was involved in criminal activity, is the best way to put it, in the metro area, and then it was recovered by the Minneapolis Police Department. So, again, I'd urge right along the lines with the gas siphoning is everyone has to do their own, you be responsible and do what they can to protect their property. Do not leave your keys in your vehicle, even when you're running into the grocery store or if it's parked in your driveway at your business. Do not leave your cars in your vehicle. Only you can protect yourself. You know, I like to go by that, but, you know, we'll do everything we can to try to help you out, but you got to protect your own property. And that's a good point to bring up, because I know just in the last week, I want to say there is at least 3 vehicles stolen in our county. Not saying it's all related, or because again, vehicles are stolen, but it's just one of those things where our contacts with these individuals, it seems like it's coming out from the metro. One of our officers was actually involved in a pursuit this morning. That party was also from the metro. Thankfully, that ended well. Any other questions on the year report before I continue on a couple more items? I stated this last year, I'm just going to state it this year, and unfortunately I don't think it'll change, but our mental health calls in our community, in our county, all over, are on the rise. You know, it takes up a lot of time and resources, but in my perspective, just going to give you my opinion, the resources are unfortunately limited for the people that need the help. But with that, there's a McLeod County crisis line that people can call at 320-864-2713 if they'd like. That has turned out to be a good option. I know I've used that on certain calls where people may not feel comfortable talking to law enforcement, and I understand that. That's an option, but we are always available if you call. The one thing with calling the police department is if nobody answers, if you follow the message through, it'll go to dispatch and it'll contact the officer that's working. So if anyone ever just needs to talk, I'd encourage you to give us a call. Please use extra caution when driving around our schools, also during the school pickup and drop off. I know that probably goes without saying, but any increased traffic in that area can really congest it at those times, and I just ask people to avoid those areas at those times. Our fraud calls, again, this has been a theme for a couple years. Just be aware of the calls that you're receiving or that you're answering. You know, our cell phones are pretty good at detecting the scam calls, but we're still taking a lot of reports for scams. We're still having people fall victim to these scams. You know, they're getting more creative. but never give out personal information on the phone. If you're in doubt, call us. Just don't be giving out that kind of information. You know, it's your Publishers Clearinghouse, Social Security scams, tax-related scams, IRS, child or family member in danger in another location, those items. Needle disposal, I think this is an important one to note. Our Take It to the Box located in the entryway of the City Hall takes unused medications, but it is not for needles. We do not want needles to be placed in there. It's a danger hazard. But the Glencoe Regional Health Services, or the hospital in Glencoe, on May 17th actually has a needle disposal day. So if you're able to hang on to your needles until then, you can bring them down there and they'll take them. I believe there's an alternate date for that too, but I do not know it. And then I just want to indicate that the officers are doing great and we are lucky to have them, and I mean that. Winter parking ban is over. Reminder that we do have a 72-hour limit for trailers, boats, campers, construction trailers, those items. That went into effect last January. Just a reminder, we do not want those items for many reasons, including just the safety of the roadways parked on the street for that length of time. And then our bicycle rodeo, talking to Officer Lammers, he is our crime prevention officer. Tentatively, it's scheduled for May 26th. We're thinking that's for sure when it'll be, but plan on it being May 26th. If that changes, you'll hear from us. But that'll be at the Winston Elementary School, like we've done many years in the past, and with donations from our great sponsors. It's a great event. So especially, you know, with what we've gone through in the last couple of years, in being in the public, last year it was amazing how many people were there, and I think the kids are looking forward to it. So that is my report. If you have any questions.
One of the areas that you documented that seems to be on an increase every year is vulnerable adult investigations. What's involved with that?
That's a great question. So a vulnerable adult can be, for any reason, a person can be a vulnerable adult. But what it comes down to is mandated reporting for vulnerable adults. That could be from mistreatment of a caregiver. So either, let's say, a child is caring for their parent, or an aunt or an uncle, or it could be from a care facility. A lot of times what we see when we get involved into it, it could be a financial exploitation, which is a fancy way for saying essentially they're using the funds of somebody else improperly. The vast majority of our calls come in, though, through the mandated reporting. So let's say there's a care center or a home health care worker that sees something that just isn't quite right. Then they are mandated to make a report. Just like I'm a mandated reporter, I've probably am accountable for, well, we'll say the police department's probably accountable for 6, 7, maybe 10 of those last year. Because if we see something, we report it even though we're going to investigate it, like child protection. Same kind of a process. We have to report things. They, though, can be very lengthy investigations. I know 2 years ago, one of our officers spent countless hours on one of these financial exploitation investigations, which actually returned a guilty verdict. And I know it was a couple $100,000 that they were ordered to pay back. So they can get quite extensive. But yes, they're on the rise. We receive a lot of them. I think just Monday I had 2 of them that came in. So not all of them result in a large investigation, but due to the mandated nature of it, there's a lot of reporting.
Then the other question I had was any time frame as far as the installation of the speed light on Linden?
It's a very good question. I know Adam and I have reached out to the county at least twice. The ball is, I think I can say this, is in their court to order it and install it. We ask that they just notify us when they do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a comment. This past month, I have been asked, and I don't know how many times, that people have been noticing that they see more of our police officers, especially at a dawn type of day.
Okay.
And I said, to my knowledge, we're just making regular turns, and that's what we do. And one lady was very appreciative. So that's always nice to hear. And I think you should hear it too.
Thank you. I'll let staff know.
I have a question. EMT training was a requirement at one time.
Correct.
How many officers do not have?
Two have it. I can tell you two have it.
Okay, and two.
Officer Lammers and myself.
Okay, have you noticed had any impact on any of your calls?
I can't speak for that because generally I'm the only officer at my calls. You know, I can't see how they're handling the calls. Essentially is what I'm trying to say. Those that are not EMTs. So I guess I can't answer that.
The reason I ask is if it is a problem, then we ought to take a look at reinstating it. So there should be some way of you knowing if it has an impact or not.
Well, my officers are very active in medicals. We do take pride in that in Winston, have ever since I've been here. That we like the assistance of the first responders, but we will not rely on the first responders, if that helps answer your question. So that attitude and the ability to care for people has not changed, and it won't change.
Has COVID had an impact?
Call-wise, yes. We've had, well, going back, yeah, a lot of calls have been COVID-related, but, yeah.
On an average, how long does it take now for ambulance to appear on a medical scene?
I've had
I know
two.
it
I
can
had two
vary.
today, so I'm just trying to think. So on average, I would say that, and time always takes longer when you're waiting, but I'd say that 10 to 12 minutes. I want to say is. I think Ridgeview could probably tell us really good what it is, but I'd say that's on average. You know, we've had a theme, unfortunately, in the last month or so of having back-to-back medicals or having medicals at the same time, where then we're pulling maybe from Howard Lake or maybe from an ambulance, you know, in a further out community. But yeah, I'd say that 10 to 12 if they're stationed in Watertown or in New Germany. We have had, I would note though, we've had a lot better response from our first responders, at least in the last couple months that I've seen. So that's a good thing.
Good to hear.
I know I've said this before, but I think we have the finest police department around
Thank you.
in the state, anywhere.
I'll let our officers know.
In the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She doesn't want you to pick her up. That's.
We've come to the open.
You saw her license plate, didn't you?
We've come to the open forum. If anyone would like to address the council, please step to the podium. Give us your name and address. If not, we will continue on to,
I think we have,
Oh.
Mr. Mayor.
okay,
Thank you for
you're very welcome.
talking to you for a second. My name is Chad Chimperly. I am from Cokato Township, and I'm a candidate for Senate District 17, the state Senate seat. I hope to be endorsed by the Democrat DFL party, and I'm here tonight just to educate myself on what's going on in the communities in our district, and I plan to make my way around from now until November and get to as many as I possibly can. And it's very interesting to see all the things you folks deal with, and if I should win, I'd love to work with you. So that's basically why I'm sitting here, and I'm just observing and taking it all in. So I have a few little bios here I'll pass out, and you can look at those, and we'll see you around.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, if
Thank
you win, Chad, you will be working with us.
What's that?
If you win, you will be working with us.
Yes, this is true. I only have a few, so.
That's all right, just, I'll share it with him.
Okay.
Well, you can just take one here too is all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't be a smarty pants.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
No other comments? I'm gonna ask Adam if he has any announcements or
Sure,
updates.
just a couple things. Please note in your water notice that we do have spring cleanup date coming up on Saturday, April 30th. That's from 8 to noon and again, that event will be held at Waste Management. We allow 5 items per household, so if you want to clean up your property or have some household items, you can bring that to Waste Management on that date of April 30th and dispose of them for free. We are doing some maintenance on our water system, April 20th through the 22nd. We're doing hydrant flushing, again, to eliminate some of the iron within the system, etc. Note that if you're washing whites or doing some laundry that date, you could have some iron come through your system, so be mindful of that and flush that out prior to doing some of those laundry items. And then lastly, many of our residents probably received valuation notices regarding their 2023 property values. So this is not reflective of our levy. This is strictly reflective of the taxable market value of your property. So if you want to dispute that taxable market value for 2023, your first opportunity or the first requirement is to contact the county assessor. After having a discussion with the county assessor, if you're not satisfied with your valuation, your next opportunity is to go to the local Board of Appeals and Equalization open book meeting, which is April 8th. So that's this Friday. It's a very short notice, but it's April 8th from 10 a.m. to noon. And that's the McLeod County Government Center, room 262. And then the last step would be to present in front of the County Board of Appeal and Equalization, and that's on June 21st at 6 p.m. So there's a couple steps you can take as a resident if you want to dispute your taxable market value on your property. So again, that should have been in your mailing that you received in the last week regarding your 2022 payable tax, property taxes, as well as the valuation for 2023.
The only thing I'll note on that, it doesn't only affect your evaluation, it also affects your amount of homestead credit that you receive.
Sure.
The more your house is worth, the less credit you get.
That is correct. Absolutely, Mike. Yes. Otherwise, that's all that I have, unless there's any questions for me.
I do have a question. Brush site?
Sure.
When are we looking at opening that?
Yeah, preliminarily speaking, was the middle of April is what we were looking at, middle to end of April. I don't recall the date off the top of my head without pulling up my calendar. It was the third Saturday, I believe, in April is what we're preliminary targeting. Now, it's certainly weather dependent. If it's wet and cold, then yeah, we might delay that date. But if the weather changes here quickly, we will likely stick with that date.
And what time are they open on Saturday?
I believe it,
9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
9 to 1.
9 to 1?
Yep.
And on Wednesday?
4 to dark.
4 to dark?
Yep.
Didn't mean to put you on.
No, that's okay. I just got a bad memory is all without looking at it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night. Good meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
I like the